Alright, let's set you up so make sure that you're
I told them that all my friends are here. All my
Okay.
friends that exist. No, I'm
Well, there
kidding.
you go. Alright, so let's just gonna put this here wherever it feels good. You can move it around if you need to,
Okay.
but that should be.
I want to make sure it's not too close. Okay, that's good. That sounds good, right? Okay. Good.
And we'll start with this at 6:30, so we have a little bit over 4 minutes.
Oh, okay. We're good on time.
Check 1 2 1 2 check. Is that okay? Okay.
Check 1 2 1 2 check. Okay. What about now? Oh, it's Shannon. Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Shannon. I'm waiting for them to do the wave.
Yeah. Yeah. We expect nothing less. Check 1 2. Check 1 2. Check 1 2. Hello, hello. Hopefully the rain won't scare people away.
Hopefully not. We're used to it. We're Floridians.
You would think, right?
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Yes. Thank you.
Can you do a couple videos? Okay. Session. Okay. How's your day? Good.
Just getting in the zone.
Yeah, I hear you.
Welcome to Three Thoughts Song. Thank you everybody that's online, especially thank you everyone that is made time to be here today. Today we have a returning guest. The first time here in the live forum, but we did have a conversation a little bit over a year ago. Shannon Rollins. Shannon, how are you today?
Doing great. Thank you for having me again. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you for coming. So we want to get started here and have a conversation about mental health. And even though you've been a guest of mine back in the days when the podcast was audio only, can you take a couple of minutes and introduce yourself, and who are you, what do you do, and how did you end up doing what you're doing today?
Yeah, so Shannon Rollins, and I'm a clinical hypnotherapist. I'm located here in Lake Nona, and I help people a lot of times with anxiety relief, with nervous system regulation, with, as the topic we're talking about, some mental health things or challenges, life transitions that people may be going through, using techniques like hypnosis, breath work, and some other techniques as well that I use with my clients in the office or also with groups. And so, your one question of how I got into this. No one grows up saying I want to be a hypnotherapist and hypnotize people. You see the traditional pocket watches on shows like Netflix, or if you've ever been on a cruise ship and you've seen people yell sleep and then everyone falls over. Mm-hmm. So that's not necessarily in the way that I work. So with clinical hypnotherapy, what I like to help people with is changing their subconscious patterns and their subconscious belief systems that could be creating and fueling emotions like anxiety, fueling emotions like depression or other things. And I actually fell into hypnosis because I actually lost my stepbrother to suicide. And at the time, I didn't want to talk about it. I was like, I don't want to talk to anyone about this. Let me just go to someone. And I fell into Google, of
Dr.
course.
Google, yeah.
You know, Dr. Google. And I'm like, well, what are some alternative approaches that can help me through something like this? And lo and behold, still my mentor today, who's located in Maitland, Renee, I always give her shout outs. She took me through a breathwork hypnosis journey. And I remember it was the most profound experience that I ever had in my entire life. And when I opened my eyes, I was like, this is exactly what I'm supposed to be doing with my life. And that afternoon, I went where did you go to school? What did you, I already had a background in health psychology. I had a master's from UF, and I really went there to help people change health behaviors, and it just wasn't doing it for me. I was like, what is that deep stuff that people are navigating that I can help them with? And I enrolled into school that day, and I knew that's exactly what I was supposed to be doing. So that's how I found my way to what I do now in my profession.
And how long have you been practicing?
About 6 years now.
6 years.
Yeah.
You said a couple of things there that are interesting,
Mm-hmm.
and evidently, you know, the topic of mental health, it's thankfully more popular now than it was, say, 30 years
Yes.
ago, 40 years ago, when I was a kid. And it's good that we have more and more people talking about it, more and more professionals engaging with people, helping people. But it is a very broad spectrum. And along that spectrum, there's all kinds of vertical tools that
Yes.
people can use. And correct me if I'm wrong, but what you do is one of those tools that can be used to address some of these issues. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah.
So can you expand a little bit there on what areas within the mental health spectrum do you try to focus on with your practice?
Yes, that's a great question. And I want to go back for a moment to the way that we're shifting the mental health conversation as well, because there's a lot of conversation out there, which is great. We're talking about it more. The stigma of there are many clients who come to me and they say, when I was a child, I didn't even know I had anxiety, or I didn't even know this was an issue, and now it's something that people are starting to speak more prevalently about. And so when we're talking in the mental health sphere and what's going on, there's certain and specific tools and techniques that are becoming more mainstream. That is a good thing, a positive thing, because sometimes, especially like in the 90s and the 2000s, we were almost like over-labeling and putting everyone into boxes and either over-medicating and not really getting to the root. And even the somatics, we'll probably touch on that in a couple minutes as well. But with hypnosis, it's still a holistic tool and technique, and breathwork is still a holistic tool and technique that I personally feel is not only recommended, but could be a requirement when we're looking at different types of ways that someone can heal or begin the process of healing from a specific behavior or a specific trauma. Because what we're used to seeing is labels. I have PTSD, I have anxiety, I have depression, so it's I am. And that just denotes I can't get out of this. I can't get out of the problem because I am the thing. And then we're over-identifying with it when anyone can find those tools to navigate through it. So when even I feel like the conversation is shifting from mental health used to be labels, and now it's starting to turn into, which I love, nervous system dysregulation. Mental health is sleep issues, not getting enough sleep. Mental health is not processing emotions properly. So we're starting to change the conversation around the I have this to this is something that I'm experiencing, and then we can do more with it. We kind of know what more to focus on and what to shift into with that.
It's interesting. It's almost like, and again, please keep me honest, correct me if I go rogue here, but it seems like we're experiencing in the field of mental health what maybe in the field of medicine started to happen maybe 15, 20 years ago, where the idea of personalized medicine, of looking at the individual, looking what's going on physiologically, somatically, and trying to now, to where today, you can actually walk into specific clinics and they'll evaluate you as an individual because there's no two of you, right? And even though you may be experiencing diabetes, you're not experiencing diabetes the exact same way as everyone else.
Yes.
Right? Because your body is unique. And it seems from what you're saying that when it comes to mental health, we're taking those same steps. Number one, acknowledging the fact that having liver disease and having, something that you're experiencing with your mind or within the domain of mental health are not necessarily that different. You still experience these things, number one. And number two, how you experience them is completely unique when compared to other people who could be experiencing the same thing.
Yes.
Am I on the right track here?
You are not rogue at all.
Great. I like that.
Yeah, and I want to go back to the word that you said, somatically, because that's another way or another term that's becoming more mainstream, which I also think is a positive thing with the internet right now and with TikTok and with Instagram, is that we're starting to mainstream some of these therapy type terms. And soma just is a Greek word that means of the body. And so this goes back to Dr. Peter Levine's research on the somatic experiencing. And now we're starting to see coaches and I with breath work and hypnosis and even NLP, those are all somatic tools. And all that means is when we are not processing our emotions properly from a very, very young age, then it can get stuffed or stored in the body. And no one wakes up, especially in the 90s, 2000s, and says, some people do, but I'm going to teach my children how to process their emotions properly today. It just wasn't really a thing that happened. And so we are neurologically linking present day experiences to past pains. And so if we're not able to learn to process and release any trapped emotion that could be trapped in the soma, in the body, that's where somatics comes into play, because something could happen today that triggers you or triggers me, and then my body gives a response. And so that just goes back to your point of we are starting to see now that everything is interconnected and linked. It's not just the mind and it's not just the body. As a hypnotherapist, I've been so used to saying the word the subconscious mind, which still is a subconscious mind, but it's really the nervous system. Like I've really started shifting my language to the way that I see the back of the mind to how is your nervous system responding to a certain thing that's happening every single day.
You find that when you talk to your patients, to your clients about the mind, about the subconscious mind, that they get a feeling that it's something that's happening just up here versus all around. Since I typically, there's a paper that I'm sure you're familiar with, very popular paper about 30 years ago, 20 years ago, Charles Nelson Clark, about the extended mind. And the big question was, where does the mind begin and the rest of the world? Where does the mind end and the rest of the world begins, right? And the whole idea that the mind is not up here, but it's actually embodied, which is what Dan Siegel talks about at UCLA also, is an embodied process, right? So it involves your organs, it involves your brain, obviously, but it also involves the things you interact with, the sounds you're experiencing, your ecosystem. Do you find that more and more people are maybe getting on board with that, or is that still seem like a foreign woo-woo type of conversation?
Ooh, it's one woo, not two woos.
Not two woos,
We're
just
halfway
one.
there. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so a lot of that's a good question, because I see a bit of both, and many people, by the time they come to something like hypnotherapy, it's really like an out-of-the-box type of experience to have, which it's very normalized. It's just like going into a deep meditation. Essentially, we're just going into those relaxed brain waves so they can become more connected. But there's something that I call felt sense, that's called felt sense out in the community. And really at the beginning of a session, when we're talking about someone's issue, I have them start to connect with their body and see how their body is responding to the emotions and even the belief systems that are connected to what's going on. And some people only feel it in their mind.
Okay.
Overthinking, racing thoughts. And some people only feel it in their body. And so both are present, but there's some of it that's unconscious. I think that we're getting there. And sometimes it's very hard for someone to connect with their body when it feels unsafe. So my goal is to help someone in that setting move into a place of safety so they can start feeling again, because it can be uncomfortable and very uncomfortable. And I can't remember what author talks about this or says it. You may have even mentioned in the past, but we're addicted to being led away from discomfort. Like of course, we're chasing dopamine, we're doom scrolling, we're finding behaviors that can really be quick fixes, which even the word distractions in the title of this podcast is we're doing everything we can to avoid discomfort, and sometimes the body just wants to speak to us and be uncomfortable so it could start to process and release and move forward. So long story short, to answer your question, yes, people are moving in that direction, and sometimes, especially if someone's experienced like a really big trauma or event in their life, it's going to take time for their body to actually feel safe again and to feel comfortable again. Feeling.
You mentioned something interesting right at the beginning that I want to go back to, and then tie that up with what you just said, that you work with people to address their beliefs. Right? And beliefs is one of these words that is such a powerful word, because it actually means a lot more than what people give it credit. And you talk about beliefs, and immediately people think of religion or spirituality, but it actually, even in the field of neuroscience, it has an extended meaning. Like your prior beliefs, what your mind or your brain is actually fine-tuned to use as part of its prediction model, right? And that's a key thing, right? That the brain, most of us, or most people think that we're reactive beings, but in reality, we are predictive beings. The brain is a predictive organ. It's predicting the present moment based on a known past, and evaluating all the inputs that we have, that we're experiencing in the moment. So when it comes to reality, is basically a construction, a controlled hallucination. What we think is real is actually the brain's interpretation of everything we're sensing through the senses, plus what the gut is evaluating through its neurons, 500 million that it has, plus the known past. And the brain favors the known past over the present stimulus we're seeing. That's why we see optical illusions, right? So there's this completely different definition of the word belief when it comes to psychosomatic, neurology, neuroscience type of lingo versus the everyday lingo. Is that something that you feel like you have to tell your clients in order to start making some headway, or do you just use other tools?
Oh boy. This is a loaded question, because if I could go across the street and get my whiteboard and I'd bring it right back here and say what I do with every single client, I actually explain that to every single client at the beginning. So when and yes, we favor the past. We do. And that's even why if there's an uncertain event in life, in an uncertain thing that's happening in the future, that's why we feel so much emotion, because we actually have nothing to compare it to. Even if it's an exciting new thing, it could be really disgruntling to the body. And so the way that I describe it is, if we have a timeline of our life and we come in, when I say relatively clean slate, it really depends what happens in the womb as well, because a lot can happen in the womb with mom. The baby is forming its nervous system around the mom's nervous system and how the mom's feeling as well. And so when we come into the world, we're relatively clean slate, and we're just starting to experience everything for the first time, and we don't know better, and we're like, oh, I got pushed on the playground. Oh, wait a minute. What does that mean about me? And then we start creating beliefs, and a belief is just a thought that we think about ourselves, and then we reinforce it with another event, and then we reinforce it again, and then we reinforce it again, and then it's an instilled belief. And then what will happen is we start experiencing life through the lens of that belief system. And I'm not saying necessarily that we're attracting the thing, but we're seeing it through the lens, which means that every experience there on out, we're looking through the lens of I'm not enough, or I'm always last place, or I don't make enough money, so I don't deserve to have this. And that's when we start to see, and that's where the nervous system and the body starts responding to it as well. So yes, absolutely. And the reason why also that we experience this at such a young age, not only is because we're experiencing it for the first time, but also because our brain waves are more relaxed when we're children. We're naturally in hypnotic states when we're children, when we're babies moving up to toddlers. And that's why always the research saying like up to 7. I even say up to 10 if someone's experiencing unless it's like a really big experience that someone has, like a really bad car accident at 15, yeah, that's older than the age, but relatively, those are the age ranges where we're starting to shape the world. And so to your point, I probably wake up every morning and I say to myself, is this even real? Where am I? So.
Yeah, no, and it's a very powerful and sobering thought experiment. And I want to bring that back to something that you said a little bit later. So we have on one hand these beliefs, or in neuroscience, they call them priors, right? So you have this model of the world that is built in your brain, and then the brain observes everything through that model, through the senses, right?
Yeah.
And what we don't know is that the same way I can have optical illusions, because the brain is expecting something and something else is not adding up. So I can see an optical illusion or an auditory illusion. I can also have an emotional illusion, right? Because the same mechanism that the brain uses to process optical and sensory illusions is the exact same process that it's going to use to process what's coming from the gut feelings. So the gut's not infallible.
Yeah.
It will make mistakes, right? So you have all this stuff, and the brain is going to favor the model, right? But that is changeable. And the way to change it is to be uncomfortable. right? Is to actually do that makes you uncomfortable. The brain's gonna see that and process as an error. I don't like it, but then you do it again. I don't like it, but then you do it again. And then you do that enough, and it's like going to the gym. At first you start lifting and it hurts, and then it keeps hurting, and then eventually you get stronger. Do you agree with that approach? I mean, is that how you bring it together with your clients?
Yeah, I always say that sometimes things have to be felt to let them go. Not always. I have some clients who, and this is kind of, this is where it gets in the conversation, and this is just what I see with my clients, is when we talk about root cause work, like you have to go to the root of the problem. I do that a lot with my clients. I still do that because I see a ton of success with, it's called regression work in hypnosis, like a hypnotic childhood regression, where we're going back not to the root of a symptom, like someone's experiencing, but the root of the emotions and the beliefs. Where did this come from? And how did it turn into this? Because it's just a stacking effect, every experience we're having. And this is where, someone will, and actually I think we talked about this on the last podcast, the Anxiety RX book, and he talks about even panic attacks. And I wholeheartedly agree with this, is that people will come in and they say panic attacks are coming out of nowhere, but they're really not coming out of nowhere. They're coming out of somewhere. What the way that I like to describe it is the body has suppressed so much that it's like an avalanche coming out, that it just has no choice but to let go. And what will happen is the body likes to do it at the most inopportune times. It's when you're in the car, when you're at work in the middle of a meeting. Like it doesn't like to choose the best times to do this. And the nervous system and the mind is really meant to keep you alive. It's not meant to make you happy. This is something that I don't want to say we've created, but this is something we're survival creatures, and our brain is still operating on an old model. So now we're seeing things like AI, we're seeing social media, we're seeing cars. This entire building, we're not used to this, technically. This is not something that the brain is necessarily designed for. So when we're seeing all this stimulation, like a light here, and all of these, so the scrolling. I think I read a statistic the other day that it was 144 times a day that we check our phone. Do you check your phone? Do you do it?
Yeah,
check your phone?
yeah.
we all. Well, because we have no choice, right? The system requires us to check our phone that many times. And so when we're that overstimulated, I always like to say we're overstimulated, we're overthinking, and we're underfeeling. Because how are we able to how many times do we check in with ourselves? If we're checking our phone 144 times a day, I'm sure it's more, I don't know, you'll have to fact check me on that, but it's a lot. If we're checking it that many times, how much time do we have to pause? And back to the discomfort that you were describing, if we pause and we feel the discomfort, if someone doesn't have the right support, it can feel like a lot for people.
Indeed. So let me throw a little bit of controversy here. I'll take all the blame. But you said something that, again, I think I'm old enough, and there's a few of my contemporaries here. I grew up in the 70s, so I was alive when the first internet, connections, were live in the university I was studying. And I remember back then people saying, when information is available to everyone, that's when all the world's problems will be solved.
Oh boy.
That was in 1989, okay? And here we are.
Yeah.
And one of the frustrating things, which is why I started writing this book that I just finished, that I shared with you the other day, is I believe part of the problem is that we don't understand a lot of what you just said. The fact that we have a piece of hardware or wetware up here between our ears that is at least 250,000 years old in its current form, right? In its current form, it was about 250,000 years ago when there was the last evolution of what we call the Homo sapiens, which are the closest ones that look like we do. And the world looked very different back then. And like you said,
Yeah.
the brain evolved not to make us happy, not to make us comfortable. It's basically to survive, to live another day so we can reproduce. That's it. The brain is literally just an energy management tool. That is its number one job, is to manage the body's energy resources so we can live another day. That's it. Happiness is not an equation of evolution. It's just not.
No.
That's something we invented, which is fine. It's great. But we seem
We
to
love
hang
being
on
happy.
to, I love being happy
Yeah,
too.
being
Otherwise
happy is
being
good.
miserable. But it's like we've departed from that, and understanding it actually empowers us, right? So, you know, it's I feel like even though we're quote unquote have so much access to education, we really do not understand how our physiology works, how the body keeps a score, like you said. You know, that was a wonderful
Absolutely.
book, you know,
Yeah.
Dr. Vanderkolk, and how if we don't do these basic things, like the breath work, like the meditation or prayer, depending on what you believe, and start allowing ourselves to release these things, we end up at some point having some sort of breakdown.
Yes.
And for me, this is where I want you to chime in, and I admit it, very, very guilty. It wasn't until very recently that my education brought me to a very hard slap in the face that things like anxiety, things like depression, it's not just somebody being weak, right? I mean, I grew up with that, and you know, that was the model
Yeah.
that I was taught. Oh, that person is just weak, or that person doesn't know how to, or they don't believe in God enough, right? That's why they're going through that. When in reality, is our physiology, our psyche. You know, we're experiencing anxiety because of A, B, C, D, E, and depending on who you are, it may be all the way through Z, right? So can you expand on that? Because I think that's so important that people realize that it's not people being weak. It's in reality, if you zoom out enough, it's no different than having a liver that's not functioning properly. I'll let you.
Yes, and I mean, we could talk all night about this. And so I see it all the time in my office. There's so much shame and guilt around what someone's feeling. I think we're starting to move away from that, and as we're talking more about mental health and the system, everything, you know, the way that we run things, it is really a huge cause for us feeling these things sometimes. Yes, the survival with the brain and how the brain works, and studies show that being out in nature for 20 minutes can lower your cortisol levels by like 10 to 15%. Being out in nature. So even things like stillness, and this goes. So now this ties back into the constant stimulation and getting things right away. Like I can go on Amazon right now, get my phone, and have something delivered here before we're done. You know, and that's a good thing. So how can we work and integrate with the tools while also honoring what the physical body wants, what the old brain wants? And when we think about that term weak and what the system, you know, has provided for us, a lot of this is really being in a place of stillness. And stillness does not have to mean being still. It can be remembering that nature is medicine, remembering that community is medicine. Like, I mean, God's honest truth. I had a rough day today, and I came here and saw all these beautiful people that I'm friends with. That's my medicine. You know, getting in community. These things are free, and they're at our fingertips, and we're so busy that we don't have time. And so it's really starting to prioritize that time as well. But everyone goes through something at some point. And I love that you said a smack in the face, because life does it when we don't pay attention, and we've all gone through it. Everyone has I have, you have, everyone in the crowd. We always face these hurdles. And what I always say is it's an opportunity for us to express being the highest version of who we are. Because you going through all this, look at all the knowledge you gain and everything you went through from it, everything that I've gone through with it, and anyone else, it's given us opportunities to really lean on people to help us grow. And we have choice in those moments. Like, who do I want to be? Do I want to go backwards? Do I want to lean on old habits or behaviors? Or do I want to go a different direction? And we always have that choice. And that period of growth can be so fulfilling when you look back from 5 years, from 10 years, looking back and say, who was that person? And like, wait, I dated him? Like, what? We've all had that. And it's a beautiful thing. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about, a little bit more about specifics of how to help people and how people can help themselves. Mm-hmm. And just pick an example, because we've talked about this before about, the anxiety, right?
Sure.
And how we can feel it, right? And how it's a psychosomatic experience, right? Because it's not just something that is happening up here, but blood pressure changes, heart rate, the stomach can start doing things because of an episode, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. In addition to some of the things that you've mentioned, which are obviously very important, like being quiet, like being in community, what are some of the new things that people can do or people have access to that maybe weren't available 20, 30 years ago to deal with those moments when you're just feeling like it's coming? Because you can feel it. Your body is trying to tell you, hey, mm-hmm. it's coming, right? And in the past, you just don't have the tools, so you just succumb to it,
yeah.
right? But now there's things that we can do, right? What are some of those things?
I want to provide a free resource because I also think that one of the challenges with mental health right now, what I've been hearing, so I consider myself also a supplement to someone going to a talk therapist. So they could go talk things out, and then we process in hypnosis. And there's a lot of times where therapists are not accessible because of money. Someone can't afford to pay for it, or because of their insurance doesn't take, or therapists are overloaded right now. It's hard to get in with someone. Like I've had clients say, man, they're not available for like 2 months. And it's not the therapist's fault, but everyone this is the part of normalizing. So if you've ever thought of becoming a therapist, go back to school and do it. There's probably a shortage at some point. But YouTube, going on one piece, and I'll take through another tip as well, going on YouTube and saying short breath work or short hypnosis or short guided meditation. I say short because you may be in the middle of something, and there are a dozen 5-minute videos that will take you through a very quick, just to bring you down a little bit, just to bring you down just enough to be able to move through an emotion. And Dr. Jill Bolt-Taylor, she's done studies on the response in the physical body. It takes 90 seconds to move through an emotion, but it takes upwards to 15 minutes to move through and process the emotion. And so there's always that, it's called the 15-minute rule. Set a timer for 15 minutes and cry or scream it out in your car. So you can allow it to come. You can allow it to come, and that's the way that you don't have it processed and stored in your body. Because what will happen is after 90 seconds, if you're going through the process, and if you've ever experienced an emotion, which we all have, and you notice it's like a wave, where maybe you're crying, and then it's like, oh, wait a minute. Okay, I feel temporarily better. In that moment, that's the wave that it happens, and everything does happen in waves. And so if you're going over 15 minutes, it means you're in a story. You're in your head. You're creating, so remember the past, the known familiar from the past, you're now starting to create a dialogue around the emotion that you're feeling. And so how can you process everything in that moment? I would say, like you had mentioned, tools, like a really quick, there's self-hypnosis tools as well that you can move through. But when you're experiencing a really heavy emotion, I always recommend breath work. Because with hypnosis, of course, as a hypnotherapist, I always recommend hypnosis. But if you're in it, you're like, I don't feel like doing this right now. And so breath work is all you have to do is focus on breathing. And so there are different types of breath work patterns that actually match different types of emotions. If someone needs to bring more energy in the body, then you're actually going to do a breath pattern that's faster. If someone wants to bring their energy down into a more grounded state, it's just a simple in through the nose and out of the mouth, like slower, and the exhale always longer. It's a free resource that has been with us since the day we were born, and I can't speak enough wonderful things about breath work as well.
So you said this several times, which I resonate strongly with. You said when you're experiencing a feeling, you're experiencing an emotion, but again, that's not how colloquially the average person uses those words. So these are my feelings, my emotions. This is me. This is and
identifying.
There is that identification. What do you tell people in order so they can start that journey of seeing themselves as the observer of their thoughts, feelings, and emotions versus being the thought or being the feeling or being the emotion?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's a type of and actually I think it's a therapeutic technique used as well, but it's used in hypnosis, and it's called parts therapy. And so what I would say is if you're identifying with something, we treat it like it's a separate entity, being, person from you. It's like the devil and the angel on the shoulder. And so what we do in something like that is create a safe space for you. Let's just say you're experiencing an emotion. You want to just play with me for a minute. What emotion are you experiencing?
Oh, let's use anxious.
Anxious, okay.
Yes, I'm anxious.
Okay, so you see how you said
Exactly.
I am.
No,
I know. I'm it. So in that process, you're having a part of you that is creating anxiety. And ideally, it's creating anxiety because of protection. It's trying to protect you. They're protector parts. And so really starting to identify, this is just a part that started to be created at some point in time. It popped up to protect me, maybe at a young age, likely at a young age. And that is the separation that you start to experience. So even like if you're a meditator or in hypnosis or even in breath work, talk to that part of you. And even closing your eyes down and saying, if this part, creating the anxiety, were to show up in my body, where would it be? Some people may say all over, some people may say it's in my head, and that's okay if it's just in someone's head. And then starting to separate yourself from that part and say, okay, part, I see you here in my heart. I hear you. What do you need from me? And starting to ask and starting to dialogue with that part. They're subpersonalities. We have hundreds of parts that help us through our day. And it's just part of our psyche that gets created over time. And so starting with that dialogue, you could use it through journaling. You could use it through hypnosis, meditation, talking it out with someone. You can use parts with really anything. So if you're experiencing, for example, this, or anyone who's listening, if you're experiencing a particular emotion, you can go home and say, okay, part, and name it. Give it a name. Mine is always Susie. I don't know why I always name my parts Susie. It just sounds like a name I would use for certain parts. But begin to name the part and love it because it wants to be seen. What we often do is we try to run from those emotions, but they're here to help us. And they create a behavior. And the behavior is just from the emotion that we're feeling. And we're trying to create either a coping strategy based on that. So being able to start with that can give you some tools to work with in the future as well.
Well, I'm definitely doing it wrong because I haven't named mine yet.
Oh, you.
And I don't do 15 minutes, I only do 5. I lose it for 5 minutes and then I'm done. Well, most of the time. No, but you're
Well, 15 minutes or less.
Yeah. Dr. Nicola Berra wrote a book called The Holistic Psychologist. She talks about
Oh, yeah. Yep.
naming, and she herself has like 15 people she's named. And I'm like, how do you keep track? You know, it's like, which one are you talking to at this point? Well, you know, I knew this was going to happen. You know, there's so many things I want to talk to you about, but I want to give a little bit of room for questions in case anybody has any questions, because we're almost out of time. Anybody from the crowd, any questions for Shannon? Please. I'll repeat it over here.
Oh, okay.
So what's the point at which you feel like you're finished in the therapy sort of context? Is there like a signal or like a sense or a feeling the person has? I'm sort of curious about that.
So for those online, the question is at what point do you feel like the therapy finishes? Is there a sense of completion from a particular therapeutic approach?
Well, that's a great question. I always love to say the work is never done. And if someone's coming in with a particular goal, and the goal is something that can be measured. So the way that we measure a goal is if someone comes in saying, well, how do you want to look and feel and be by the end of our work together? And if we can prove that, and the only way to do it is test it, go out in the world, look, feel, and be. And if they're feeling that, whatever that particular goal is for that person, I want to feel more peace in my life. I want to sleep at night. And there's some goals that are more measurable, of course, like I want to have a good night's sleep versus I want to feel more peace versus I want to feel happier in my relationship. Those are much easier to measure, but it's really up to that person and how they're feeling within that process. So there's some things that can be measured and some it's based on that person, but ideally a big goal is that they come in and leave feeling way better than when they originally came in. So, yeah.
What do you tell people to say, I just want to be happy?
Oh, we do. We get more specific than that. What would that look like and feel like? How would you act every day? How would you respond to your kids? How would you even spend your money? Like, what behaviors every single day? We have to find ways to understand, because I could say I just want to be happy, and then I'm going to find another thing to be unhappy about. Because, again, we're survival creatures.
Any other questions? Yes, Glenn.
Okay, at the very beginning, you made reference to an acronym, NLP. It was when you were discussing the subconscious mind and the nervous system for the extended mind. What does the acronym stand for?
Neurolinguistic programming. Yeah, so neurolinguistic, which a lot of people mix it up with it's like a software program. Natural language processing, yes. Neurolinguistic programming, so when we're working together, it's certain language patterns and techniques that are very hypnotic in nature. And like if you're familiar with Tony Robbins, all he does is NLP. His type of work is all of his interventions that he does are NLP related as well. Yeah. Neurolinguistic programming. You're welcome. Great question.
Any other questions? So what would you like to leave? You know, again, 3 thoughts. 3 thoughts on, improving mental health, and giving yourself some grace, because we are just a special type of primate navigating to a world that doesn't look anything like what the world looked like when our brains were developed. So we have to give ourselves some grace. How do you leave the crowd with 3 things that they can do in order to enjoy life a little bit more?
Yeah, great question. So, oh my gosh, there's so much. One of them is you're not alone. You're never alone. What I notice in my office is that a lot of people come in, especially phobias, that you feel like this is a weird thing, like people say this is something that's weird, and it's very common. And I always say if I could get everyone in a room together who are experiencing the same types of things, maybe we'll do that in the future, I don't know, but you'll see that we're all walking this life together and that you're never alone, and to seek help in whatever capacity works for you, whether it be talk therapy, whether it be going to a really good coach, whether it be going to groups or retreats or hypnotherapy or any acupuncture. There's so many, YouTube. You know, if you're like, I'm not ready to get out there yet, there's so many different resources that are available that can be helpful. The second thing is a lot of times when we're experiencing emotions, it's because it's our nervous system. It's dysregulated. All dysregulated means is that it's in fight, flight, freeze, appease, all the things related to the nervous system. You can heal your nervous system through techniques like meditation, breath work, heart-brain coherence techniques, hypnosis. There are many tools. It doesn't matter what someone has been through. You can regulate your nervous system. I've seen it in my office, and I know many other people have experienced what that feels like. And you don't actually know that you're dysregulated sometimes until you do things like assessments and realize that even happened to me. You know, I went through a process even in my breathwork training where I was like, wow, I'm actually dysregulated. and you don't actually know it until you feel you're truly in that state of coherence. And so and then the third thought is just pick, and this is more of an action item, just pick one thing to start with. Journaling is very therapeutic. Breathing is very therapeutic. Going in nature. We do a walk once a week at Split Oak Forest, and I swear it's the most healing thing ever, just going out in the forest and seeing red cardinals. And it's a beautiful thing. Life really is beautiful when you're looking through that lens of this is just an experience. This is an experiment. This is a great experiment. What can I do to express the highest version of me? And how can I find these connection points to experience more of that goodness?
And we didn't touch about this. I want to give you the last word on this real quick. But in addition to all that, you know, everybody's different, and there is room for medication for some people, mm-hmm. and there is value in that, right? And sometimes that could be a starting point to get you to a place, and then the therapy can kick in. So I wanted to make sure that I was fair across the board.
Absolutely.
So give me the last word on that.
Yeah, of course I'm holistic. So, but yeah, absolutely. There's always room for help in every single area. Yeah, in every single area. And here's the thing: if you're feeling like you're in a hole and you're having a hard time getting out, lean on the experts who can help you. Like, go to a psychiatrist, go to a psychologist, go to a licensed mental health counselor, go to a licensed clinical social worker. And then, of course, hypnotherapy, like all the holistic tools, all of it can be used very cohesively together. Because even I do a lot of cross referrals amongst all of those industries, because everyone just wants to help you feel better. That truly is the case.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for being here with us. Thank you, those of you who are online. We're going to take about a 10-minute break, and then we'll have our next guest. Thank you for being here. Those here, please hang around.
Thank you.